All right. We're a couple minutes past, so I think we'll probably just start some intros and get it going. Hi everyone. I'm Chelsea D'Angelo. I'm gonna be your moderator today, so excited to have some fun. Thanks so much for joining us. We're very excited for you all to be here and us to be able to have these types of conversations. We have a wonderful guest panel with us today that we're going to get started in just a minute. Before we do, I want to note that this will be recorded. So if anyone who misses it or you have to drop early, you will be emailed an on-demand version of this after the few days, I think, after today, after the recording. And then separately, you will have two chances to win during this webinar. So 4 lucky winners will be randomly selected to win a prize of up to $275. So make sure to check your inbox after the webinar, both for a recording and both to see if you are one of the lucky winners. With that, I think numbers are still rising, but I think we're just gonna dive right in. We will have, as you notice here, and thank you, Jill working in the background is kind of noting some things in the chat for you to know if you're having trouble. We also, you'll see a panel in there, a Q&A panel. We will have time at the end for question and answer. So drop in questions as you feel, as they pop into your head, and we'll try to address as many as we can at the end of the webinar. And feel free to, obviously we try to, if there are tons, we will try to send follow-ups and then share some notes from all of the panelists after the fact as well, just to try to see if we can answer everyone's questions. So with that, I wanted to start with introducing our guest panelists today. Thank you so much, ladies, for being with us today. We'll start with Bree and work our way over, and I wanted to give themselves a chance to introduce themselves.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Brianna Wynn. I'm the creative director at Agency 53. It's a marketing agency headquartered in Denver. I've been in the creative field for about 10 years. At Agency 53, I oversee our creative department. So designers, copywriters, web design and development. We're a full service marketing agency that has both digital services as well as creative services. Prior to that, I was at another Denver marketing agency that specialized in experiential marketing, worked with a few clients, Under Armour, Bud Light, Michelin. There I was working more out of home advertising, experiential brand activations. And yeah, that's a little bit of my background.
Great,
Eric. Sounds good. Yay, Brianna. My name is Erica Hanna, and I am the owner of Puke Rainbows, which is a video production company that's been active for about 10 years now. I've been in video for 20 years. I worked in TV news for 10 years prior to opening my own shop. I also am the co-founder of an AI startup called Camcorder AI, which I'll talk about a little bit today, probably. And yeah, I've gotten to work with a bunch of really cool people. Prince was a client of mine, Ellen DeGeneres, Billy Crystal, Harry Connick Jr., and I have 6 Emmy Awards. So I love being creative and just working with all kinds of awesome people like the people here today who are very, very cool.
Okay, well, that's awesome because I get to go next on the intros right after being called cool. So that was wonderful, Eric. So my name is Donna Root. Hi, everyone. I work at Smartsheet, where I'm vice president of brand and creative for the creative and content for the company. So we have an amazing internal studio at Smartsheet where we have everybody from content writers, strategists, process experts, through to animators, designers, motion graphics, just a really amazing team of creative people. So we feel very lucky within my group to have the fabulous team that we do, and we get to do a lot of really great creative stuff for our company, Smartsheet. I've been at Smartsheet for just over a year, and prior to that, I've been with other big brands running design shops. And before that, got to do a little bit of agency work when I was kicking things off. Though my company's based in Bellevue, I'm living the remote dream. I'm coming at you from Minneapolis, Minnesota today.
Wonderful. We've got a divide of Denver and Minneapolis.
And Minneapolis, because Erica, yeah.
As I mentioned, my name is Chelsea D'Angelo. I work at Smartsheet. I'm a director of design and campaigns. I spent most of my career in agency. I worked with big brands like Target, Home Depot, Levi Strauss, ExxonMobil, really focused on digital strategy and content production before I moved in-house to Brandfolder, which was then acquired by Smartsheet. We're very excited to have all of these very talented panelists on our webinar today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Brandfolder and Smartsheet, and then we'll get into it. Brandfolder by Smartsheet is a product that was acquired by Smartsheet. Together, they are leaders in digital asset management and collaborative work management. We basically cater to, well, one of the things many things that we do is cater to marketing and creative folks like yourselves and make sure that we enable better work, faster work, end-to-end campaigns, and easier brand management. We are, well, I should say that 80% of Fortune 500 companies are currently using Smartsheet today. And both Brandfolder and Smartsheet are ranked #1 in their categories in G2. So with that, we can get into the meat of today. As you all know by the title, we are talking about AI and creativity. AI is entering an uncharted territory. I think we're all aware it's in the news every day, but in order to have this discussion, we wanted to kind of make a delineation. There's been AI, uses of AI for a long time. We live and breathe it, whether it's in emails or text messages or things that you kind of subtly notice. There is a difference, though, in what's happening today and this within the past year, even of traditional or maybe predictive AI and generative AI. And I think all of us are kind of thinking ChatGPT, and that is really generative AI when we're creating something new versus traditional and predictive AI, which is recognizing patterns, kind of analyzing things that have happened in the past, which is similar with generative, but then the actions that you take going forward is a little bit different. So we wanted to kind of make sure that that was level set, that generally in this webinar, we're going to be talking about generative, which is what you're hearing about in terms of DALL-E and ChatGPT and some of the things that are capturing the attention and the news cycle these days. Oh, look at that slide. Love that. The adoption rate of generative AI is booming. And that's really about this kind of shift in technology that's happened over the past arguably year or year and a half. And that's really the commercialization of generative. So like I said, we're all fairly familiar with AI to an extent. And what we're doing here is what's happened here is pushing that more into a very different category. And I think that's why you're all here today is listen, how does that intersect with creativity? But basically to kind of show you how things are changing and how rapidly they're changing. We have some quick stats here. So 43% of professionals were reported using generative AI tools for work-related tasks by late January 2023. That's this year for if you're watching on demand. It's August 2023 right now. And 60%, 8 months later, of organizations have reported AI adoption and usage of generative AI as of August 1st. So that's a pretty big jump in really a pretty short period of time. There's a study that was out in the UK that looked at the number of folks in the UK that were starting to use generative AI and that growth. And for comparison, it took voice-assisted speakers, so you're thinking Alexa's, Amazon's Alexa, about 5 years to reach the same adoption level that we're starting to see with generative AI. So it's very rapid. So if anyone's a fan or is vaguely familiar with Moore's Law, I know it's a hotly debated topic in the scientific community. It seems to be a point in his favor. And if anyone's unfamiliar, Moore's Law is Moore is the co-founder of Intel, and he basically came up with the premise that technological advances happen exponentially, and so the rate at which we excel and adopt and innovate is faster and faster because we do it in a same amount of period of time, and it doubles every 2 years is the premise. So this is happening really fast. And so it's more important than ever that I think we have these discussions and we start to understand what's coming toward us. I mean, I think we've seen it in the news cycle, but being open about how do we deal with this? What do we need to understand? How do we learn? And start thinking about all of the ways in and all of the questions that you were about to go through, having those open discussions so that we start to understand what we're getting into and how to go through it together.
I was going to jump in on this one, if you don't mind, Chelsea. As far as looking at what we've seen in the wild so far, creatively, it seems a little stunt-based, that AI is still so new, and I don't mean that as a diminishing kind of a thing, but there's such unique kind of unusual things that you can do that the visualization of those and the use of those still causes surprise and sort of creates a little bit of a bump or a little bit of maybe social magic for some of the brands that are working on it. So if you haven't seen the Coca-Cola commercial, the Coca-Cola Real Magic, it is pretty cool the way they are kind of moving through an art gallery environment. It seems like it might be the Louvre or something similar. And the Coke bottle kind of transitions to be in the style of the different artists that it kind of moves through. So that I think probably gets some of the things we'll touch on a little later about art and sort of, some of the problems with AI and what it's drawing from. But it also was used by Heinz recently, just when people start talking about showing ketchup doing this or ketchup doing that in one of the new tools, the thing that was showing up, the image that was showing up was always a Heinz shaped bottle or label. And so they were just kind of, proving to themselves that, hey, Heinz is synonymous with ketchup because, hey, look, it's showing up in all of the AI images. And then Department Hello Monday, some gorgeous agency work where they were filling empty storefronts with this possibility to try on shoes by walking by. So they were using AI to match shoes to your outfit, and also at the same time selling some shoes possibly, and making an empty storefront in these post-pandemic times look kind of cool and kind of interesting. So there's some pretty interesting stuff. Right now, it still feels a little stunty rather than completely woven into sort of how things are executed.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And so there's tons of promise, but to Donna's point, it is pretty stunty right now, but there are little ways that this is already kind of incorporated into our world. And I think a lot of you may feel this. If not, I think these stats are kind of interesting. So 51% of marketers say they're currently using generative AI. So you may not think about it in terms of marketing sense, but I mean, copy creation, tons of ChatGPT really in generating SEO keyword lists, long form content into social posts and ad copy, and guide bidding decisions for paid ads even. Really powerful stuff right there. And I think that a lot of things that we would say save us a lot of time. And then 81% of creatives have used AI in their work. And that's little things that, little aspects of tools that help us style and edit, localize storyboards, create seamless textures. I think a lot of you have probably felt or used kind of like little things that help to adjust and help us get a little bit faster along the way, get a little bit better, spend less time having to go into some of the details and do it manually. So I think there's a lot of good that can come from that. And obviously this is kind of just the beginning. This is some of the stuff that we're probably a little more familiar with right now. And I think some of the stuff further out and how big of a power AI can be is some of the stuff that we're going to kind of speculate and discuss with these panelists. I was listening to a podcast the other day that I thought I liked this quote, and it was Leadership Next, if you're familiar with that. Reid Hoffman, who they had him as a guest, he's the co-founder of LinkedIn, and he was actually quoting Steve Jobs. And it was Steve Jobs back in the day who said, computers are like the bicycle for the mind, which I thought was really interesting. And then he went on to say, Reid Hoffman, that is, that if we can take that as an analogy, then AI is like the steam engine for the mind. which I think is pretty compelling, and I think is a really kind of interesting perspective on the whole thing. So with that, we're gonna talk about the other side of that.
Yeah, I think if I can hop in here really quick, Chelsea, to talk about some of the threats. I know that there's been some litigation. We were just talking about before we started the webinar, actually, that the New York Times was just confirmed last week as potentially going to sue ChatGPT, as they actually were in talks with OpenAI, the owner of ChatGPT, to integrate services together, but things got so contentious that they are now in litigation. Same thing with Getty Images, that is in a lawsuit currently with Stable Diffusion, because in some of these type of images that were popping up, there was actually the Getty Images watermark, except it was really distorted. So they definitely have a case. I was talking to my lawyer about that the other day, and yeah, it's really interesting to see the threats there as far as intellectual property goes.
Yeah, what's interesting, I actually just saw a judge, which is very recent, a judge ruling that images created by AI can actually not be copyrighted. That was just one judge, but saying that without human guidance, they cannot, like, basically she equated it to a monkey taking a selfie. Without human guidance, it cannot be copyrighted, which is, I thought was interesting. It may not stand forever, but that was a very recent ruling that I saw.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So with all this, we want to ask you all in the audience how you're feeling about this. So what we're going to pull up is two polls. The first of which is here. So how do you currently feel about companies applying generative AI to creative work? We'll give you a few seconds.
I feel like we should have done some like betting on the results among the panelists. Like, do we think everybody's going to be excited, ticked off?
Tell the truth. Be honest. All right, a few more seconds. Cool. Let's see our results. 49% say cautiously optimistic. 24% anxious or nervous. Curious and excited, 20. Indifferent, ticked off, ticked off. The 2% ticked off. All right, I like your honesty. Thank you. Great. That's really helpful and good to know. We're just curious as we kind of go into this conversation where everyone's at. We have another poll, a little different. What types of AI tools do you currently use in your organization? I'll give you another like 30 seconds for this one too. All right, let's see our answers. Our answer's not working. There we go. Great. ChatGPT 55. I'm glad my references before to ChatGPT did not go last on most of you. You've heard of it at least. Many of you are using it. Adobe Firefly. Another big one for creatives for sure. All the rest are relatively low, honestly. And what AI tools? 23%. All right. So maybe you're just dipping your toe and want to learn a little bit more. That's great to hear. other. Cool. And I'm going to check on the Q&A. All right, we got some good questions coming in. Just make sure we don't have any. Did anybody say none? Well, we had 23% saying what AI tools. So yeah, which is interesting. It is in its infancy as much as the adoption is quick. There's still probably a lot of more adoption for many use cases to go, really. All right, lovely. I've talked enough. We are going to dive into our questions for these lovely panelists. Many of our questions today were generated by ChatGPT. Fun fact for you. So let's get into the first one. Can AI truly generate new ideas and be considered creative? We're going to start this one off with Donna.
Okay, cool. I think so. So let's see. It kind of gets to how do you define creative? But there's some new things that can be kind of brought together that couldn't have been before, or reaching out to different sources or other possibilities or new amalgamations of things. And I feel like creatives have always gotten their inspirations from a variety of sources that might be unexpected. You know, you could be walking down the street and you like the texture on the side of the building, or maybe the typography on that old gas station you drove by, or, you know, there's just a color palette could come from somebody's sweater that you really, you know, that you remember some combination of colors. So to me, I think that having these new tools just give you some new sparks that you can riff off of creatively. So can they generate new ideas and be considered creative? I don't know that it's full-fledged ideas, but I think they can be considered creative. And, you know, I know we're going to learn more about some of the other tools and talk about them a little bit later, but I do think that it's creativity that they're bringing forward. And then how that kind of, you know, gets turned into final execution relies a lot on sort of the individuals. But what do others think?
I actually, I think I have an opposite take, and I think I take it a little bit more literal, in the sense that I think AI is not truly creative, because I think creativity is, it's innately a human function. There's a book by Marty Neumeier called Meta Skills, and in it he says, you know, creativity, humanity, like the act of being human itself, and then leadership are the three things that continue to set humans apart from robots. And he also talks about things like feeling and seeing and dreaming and things that really humans, you know, related to creativity. Those are things that only humans can do. And so in a literal sense, for me, I see creativity as a human function, and not, you know, we can't call AI creative, because I almost want it to just like stay ours.
Yeah, that's totally fair. We can gate it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think it's a tricky one, for sure. On to our next one. How has AI influenced the creative process in your experience? And can you share any specific examples? So for this one, let's kick it off with Erica.
Yeah, sure. It absolutely has. I have a pretty fun example, actually. I was working with AARP, who's a big client of mine, but specifically last month working with AARP Puerto Rico. And I had to direct a shoot remotely. And I was working with a videographer and a lighting director that I didn't know. I'd never met them. There was also some language barrier issues because I don't speak Spanish, unfortunately, and it was their first language. And I ended up using a few different tools. I used some generative AI to create the images for the way I wanted the lighting to be for my storyboard. And that was super cool. So I could show, you know, my version of a close-up, my version of dramatic lighting, you know, that type of thing. Then I also used a tool called DeepL for some translation of documents and our transcripts, which is instant translation, which was really cool. And also Happy Scribe to translate the videos once I got them so that I could then put that into a script for the editor. So the whole process, top to bottom, I was using AI and it was almost seamless. We got things done so quickly. It was really neat. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And how accurate was it in terms of translations?
Yeah. So I was actually talking to their intern because he's like wonderfully bilingual and just amazing. And he said that he uses Google Translate all the time, in
Mhm.
kind of like buffering. And he's like, wow, DeepL, like this is way better. Like it definitely
Mhm.
picked up on the nuances. And there is even I can't remember if it was in DeepL or if it was in Happy Scribe, but there was even dialect that you can select like within the language. So pertaining to different parts of countries and where people are from. So that was really helpful and cool. Oh,
Yeah, that's impressive. I know
yeah.
that I did a lot of translations for companies and ran kind of a whole global content network, and translations were tough. They're traditionally just, man, they're a pain in the butt
Mhm.
and they're always wrong. Or like seems to be like the stakeholders in each of the countries were still like, who's doing this? This is always not quite hitting the right note.
Yeah.
So to have that be improved, I think, I mean, the time that will save and the ability to kind of do more things on creatively, and get
Mhm.
time on that is huge.
Yeah, we sat down to look at the final script and he's like, okay, let's block off an hour for this. Okay. And I was like, sure. And he goes through it and he found one line out of 5 scripts that were 2 minutes each. And he's like, this is the only one that has even a little bit of nuance that's off. He's like, this is wild. What tool is this? So
Yeah,
yeah, crazy.
incredible. Anyone else?
I can jump in here from a marketing agency perspective. I think
Great.
for anybody who has been part of an agency or has worked in an agency or works at an agency currently, the number one restraint for creative is time, right? So there's often this idea that we have to let our creative ideas incubate, and that's always been the way that the creative process works is you think of an idea, you let it sit in your head for however long it needs to sit in your head. Maybe it comes up again in the shower. It takes a while to kind of really reach that fully fleshed out idea. And I think what's been cool about utilizing AI within our agency now is that we can meet those client deadlines a little bit quicker because we're able to use generative AI to conceptualize. We can test out different alternatives. We can look at all the different possibilities within minutes. And so creativity itself and the concept generation itself then becomes kind of an agile process where, we can see like, okay, this is what that might look like. We might not like that. Let's, go ahead and iterate and continue to build on that. And again, it's not, it doesn't take the time that creative conceptualization used to take, right? And I think it's allowed our creatives to work a lot faster within agency work, and we've been able to meet our deadlines quicker, and I've really liked how it's enabled my team to be a lot more efficient.
Mm-hmm. That's huge. I'm a big shower idea girl. I can't brainstorm on the spot. I'm always like, let me absorb this and walk away for a few days, and then something
Yep.
will hit me randomly.
Well, and I'm
I
intrigued. It
don't know.
sounds like for both of you, once you've put it out there, or like with your storyboards, Erica, once you've kind of generated what you were thinking of, did you then tweak your concept based on what it was visualizing for you? So it allows you, to your point, right, Brianna, it just rev a little faster on that whole process.
Yep.
Absolutely. And then I just had to make sure and say, but make sure that the person we're shooting doesn't have like 7 fingers and really bad teeth. No, because that's always the issue with AI, right?
Yeah. The hands.
The hands.
There's not so much threat yet. Don't worry.
Yeah,
They
they
still
can't.
can't get it all right. So I think that can make everyone feel better, honestly. All right, great. On to the next one. How can AI be used to augment human creativity rather than replace it? Which I think is it's a fine line, but let's go back to Donna.
Well, this one maybe gets back to when Brianna and I were talking a little bit earlier. It does seem to me like an augmentation sort of thing. Even the example of a storyboard, you can have a concept and put it out there, and it'll help you kind of riff more quickly. But I also just wonder, the visuals and the words will have to come from a strategy of some sort, right? And so, having a creative strategy or a way that you're going to solve a problem with creative, with design, with, words, with copy, you have to have that. The human has to kind of have that. And then the tools can maybe help you execute against it or rev against it more quickly or more actively. But it does seem like you're going to have that augmentation. It's not sort of addressing a market problem by itself. You're the one that has to translate that market problem into what you could do about it creatively. So that still seems like a really tight tie to me.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a very philosophical discussion and question that you could have around, is it possible to actually, well, with creativity being as innate as it is it possible to even replace it ever? There's a lot of things where you start with one and you guide to something entirely different, and to call that not creative is just false, I think. So yeah, so I think that's interesting.
You're right. Maybe it's kind of like fuels a little bit of the creative process. It could be a little bit of a, a little burner underneath it, kind of keeping it hot. Just because you've got access and quick access to so many things, which would have took days, recently, and months, back a few years. So yeah, the pace is faster, and then that maybe leads to better creativity as a result.
For sure. And there's creativity in really everything. It doesn't have to just be one specific thing as well. Erica, how about you?
Yeah, I also think that within the same question is the fact that AI can make creativity more accessible to people. For example, with our shameless plug, with our company, Camcorder AI, which deals with video editing, what I want to do is democratize video editing, because I want to make sure anyone can do it, because it can be a skill that takes a lot of training. And so what we've done with our model is to make part of our editing a text-based model. So you have your script, you're highlighting it, and then you're cutting it. It looks a lot like the script. But then there's also, in our next iteration, you're going to be able to talk to the platform, just like Siri, just like Alexa, so that you can, even if you don't understand these tools and the 3,000 buttons like that are in Adobe Premiere that confuse even people like me who've been editing 20 years, you can just say to the program, please add my logo at the end, and then fade out for 15 seconds, and it's going to make it so accessible to people. I think that's where I look at the word augment, right? Because augment means to add to. So.
Right.
I like the idea of just bringing the possibility of doing the work to more people. And maybe we'll get into it in other questions, Chelsea, I'm not sure, but then what about the people that were video editors for all along, right? Is that, what does it sort of mean for them? And I guess it still kind of comes back to part of their craft wasn't the editing in the software. The craft was what to do with storytelling visually, and that's not really going away.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
The decision making.
Right.
Yep. We talk about that a lot, that we want to free up the time of doing the mundane editing tasks, things like when you're versioning out something for all the different social media platforms, that becomes just a button, instead of I have to have 8 different timelines for all the different aspect ratios, and then instead you can use that time that you would be editing to be more creative. So it's actually allowing you to be more human and to be more creative.
I love the word human there too. That's awesome.
And I go out on a limb to hope that we all live in a world where there's work-life balance one day, you know? And that would
spending
help
all that
get
time
there.
with all those versions Erica was talking about.
Yeah.
Eat some dinner. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, great. Let's move on to the next one. What are the potential biases and larger cultural and societal risks associated with AI generated content, and how can we address them? Erica, I think you had a good one for this one.
Yeah, just really quick. I think bias is integrated into so many things, and we need to remember that AI relies on data and that our data is already biased. There's a really great book out there called Algorithms of Depression or Algorithms of Oppression by Sophia Noble, where she talks about search engines being biased. And I noticed this in my own work. I have a side project called Big Fat Confidence, where I'm empowering people in larger bodies to step into the spotlight and tell their own stories. And I went in to create some images for my new website, and I typed in happy fat woman and on Canva's generative AI platform, and that came back as an unsafe search, and it refused to generate images for me. And I was just like, okay, so as a fat woman, I am like not allowed to be happy. Cool. So then I typed in happy thin woman, and that was like, boom, no problem. So we need to remember that bias is always going to be there. And one way that we can address bias is to actually participate. So it's not just people that look the same creating the data, right? Like we need to participate. We need to bring everybody along so that everyone can be at the table for that discussion.
Entirely agree. Yeah, it's not like it doesn't exist without AI. So we're teaching AI, what we teach it's teaching patterns. So I think we all need to be active participants in trying to defeat that.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest area where it's so fraught with peril. I mean, it's just a reflection of all of the biases that are nasty out there now. So yeah, very worrisome.
Mm-hmm. There's a great podcast episode we actually have, again, shameless plug, on the Brain Collective, that talks about this from someone from Getty. She was great, and she had a lot of thoughts on this, and it's very interesting. I think they're going to drop that in the chat for anyone who's interested.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being told we need to accelerate, so we're going to move on to the next one. What new opportunities and challenges might arise for creatives in the future as AI technology continues to advance? So for this one, let's have Donna, you kick it off for us. I think everyone has something on this one, though. It's a good one.
My thought on this one is it comes back to the value that you're bringing to the businesses you're working with as a creative. And it's that connection of creative strategy and creative thinking to the business strategy. How do you use design or writing or your own field to solve a business problem? I think that that's going to continue to just be that opportunity for creatives as they work with AI in this field. So no matter how it advances, as you try new tools, that's still kind of, that's your role. You're orchestrating those tools to do that, solve a business problem via design.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I was just reading an article by Mark Andreessen, and there's a quote that really stood out to me about the opportunity for AI. And the quote was that AI can make everything that we care about better. And I think, to think about it that way is just so amazing. I mean, he then goes on to talk about like all these examples of how AI can assist us in our daily life. I mean, if you think about it, every child can have a tutor, every person can have an assistant, a therapist, a coach, a mentor, a trainer. Every scientist can have, a partner, an assistant. Every leader of people can have extra hands and extra brains to do more things. And so I just really resonated with me in terms of the opportunity to use AI to just make our world better.
I love that. Nice quote, too. Final thoughts? Lovely. All right. Our final question for today: what skills and knowledge should creative professionals develop to effectively work with AI technologies? How can organizations support them and help prepare employees for an AI-driven era? Bree, how about you?
Sure. I think my opinion on this is two things. I think one, be an early adopter. I don't think that there's any harm that comes in trying. I think the biggest mistake you could make is not trying, because if you think about it, it really just enhances your cognition and enhances your efficiency. Of course, there's a lot of things around processes and copyright and things that we have to think about, but I think try it in your ideation phases, try it in your conceptual phases, and see where it gets you. And I think, yeah, like I said, just early adoption. And then I know Erica can talk a little bit more about this, but we were kind of talking about the fact that prompt engineering is like a lucrative up and coming career now. And so I would say learn how to engineer those prompts, learn how to adjust your input so that you're getting the right output as well.
100%. Yeah, I love that. I mean, this is said a lot in the corporate world, and I think almost to a fault, but it's the idea of like be and stay curious about what's happening in your field and be open to that. I think is kind of that first step towards learning how to embrace something.
Yeah, Chelsea, I mean, it's not going to get stuffed back in the box, is it? So, it's sometimes all the news gets to be very heavy on people. And so some of the dire predictions that might be coming out about AI could, affect people too. And we had so many people that were like, what tools, even on our poll, that it does make me think that this is a good time to just go ahead and pop up, out of your day-to-day life and play around with some things. I think we're going to have a really good list of tools to play with. And maybe you won't use it every day, maybe you won't, but stay current and kind of try a few things. You might be the person that just brings a new idea to the table at your company or your business, your agency. You might have a way that it just saves a half an hour for you each day, or just makes your, for Erica's idea, your translations go more smoothly next time. Something little might happen, but at least you'll be listening and you'll be a part of what's happening.
Creating community around the new things coming out is a really great idea, because when we are just solitaire in our experimenting, we can be limited, right? I know a lot of people who are creating AI task force at their individual workplaces, and they're like, this is great because this person was using this thing and I got to learn more about it. And I'm actually going to use that in my day-to-day life for recipes or whatever that is. It's not even going to be about work. So, I mean, there's a website called Futurepedia, and it lists basically all the AI tools out there right now. So, for example, it has 186 different copywriting tools. So it's not just ChatGPT, there's a bunch of them. So if you look at ChatGPT and you're like, I hate this interface, like I do, I think it's so ugly, it's then I can use a different one, right? But the nice thing about that is it's not just copywriting. They also have 163 customer support tools. So if that's something you don't want to do, like outsource it there. There's 389 tools on Futurepedia dealing with productivity that might have nothing to do with work. So just think about new and inventive ways that you can use it. It doesn't have to just be ChatGPT that you're sitting in. Yeah.
Love that. I do see a lot of Q&A on specifics around tools. So if we flip to the next slide, we actually created some kind of simple tools that we thought might be helpful for people to just kind of dip their toes in. Some of them you may be familiar with, you may not be familiar with all of them. Our host, thank you, Jill, is dropping in a PDF of that right now. So you can kind of take that with you on your way and kind of try to explore some of these for a number of creative and content elements, video as well, just to dip your toe in and kind of explore some tools that might be helpful in your day-to-day. I'll leave that up for there for just a sec. And then we do have some great questions coming in. So we're going to open it up to the Q&A. Yeah, so there are a bunch already. She's telling us that we can drop in more. So anyone feel free to chime in. I think this is good because this relates to one topic that we were just talking about. Scott is asking, what AI translation tool would you recommend that prioritize accuracy and congruency? Erica, I know you had just mentioned one that you felt you did a really great job.
Yeah, DeepL is incredible. Absolutely awesome. Loved it. And one of the things I like about DeepL is that you can literally just take the entire document and you don't have to copy and paste all the text. You just drag the document on and it's instant. And the whole document is translated into the same type of document. So if you drag in Word, it's translated into Word. Yeah.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And in that same vein, we have Whitney asking, I work within a B2B agency. What are your thoughts on AI translation services with a proprietary client information? I know, like Bree, you work at an agency too, and Eric, I don't know if you've dealt with this, but any thoughts?
Man, it's tough.
I was going to say I'd be worried. I don't know for you how
tough one.
you guys do, but
Yeah, that's a tough one.
if it's proprietary, I'd hesitate to put it out there, I guess is where I'm at. Anybody
Yeah.
got another point of view?
I mean, yeah, I definitely agree. I think that there are ways to, like, for instance, if it's a script, kind of redact, take out the super proprietary stuff, and then translate with AI, the stuff that's more generalized in nature when it comes to scripting. And then all you have to use an actual translator for would be the proprietary lines. So it cuts down on your expense there for sure. But it's a headache, but is it more of a headache than like using an actual translate? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think so.
Actually, I think that's a great idea for a hack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a point about security that we just haven't touched on. It's sort of still so Wild West.
It is. And I mean, so to the point on lawsuits and the rulings of the judge, I think it's no man's land at this point. And I think that analogy with that Steve Jobs in kind of like the space of the internet, I think our rules and kind of society is still catching up in that sense in terms of which actually relates to this next question, but in terms of the internet itself, even without AI.
Yeah.
And so it unfortunately will, I think, take us quite some time to actually nail out what makes sense and how to even determine these types of rules. And it's a lot of gray for sure. So Aaron was asking, I've seen people selling the prompts for generative AI, which is interesting. So couldn't that be copyrighted rather than the image itself, since technically AI can't reproduce the same thing twice? And that's interesting. Could you copyright the prompt for generative AI? And obviously, none of us are lawyers here, so we're talking about it with our craft. So disclaimer. But I think it's interesting. I would find that hard to believe.
Because it'd almost be like copywriting, as a producer, I come up with a list of questions for the people I'm interviewing, right? It's like, I'm not going to copyright the list of questions, and a prompt is basically a way to communicate. So I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. And to your point, Aaron, AI technically can't reproduce the same exact thing, or generally won't. But it's interesting. I mean, you bring up a great point. It's tough to say where that will lead.
Yeah, because if
Here.
you think about it, the
Mhm.
prompt and the input is what is the unique part of it, right? It's like that the prompt engineering is the unique part of that process. So technically, I mean, I feel like you could.
Mm, maybe. And like the original part, essentially.
Yeah,
Like it's yours
yeah,
and yours alone. Yeah,
yeah.
that's an interesting one. We'll have to bring a lawyer on next time, Aaron, and we'll figure that one out. Honestly, they may not know at this point the whole gray area, but we'll see what we can do. We still have time. So does AI create any other visual problems besides fingers? For example, prejudices. And we did talk about kind of those biases a lot, but is there anything else anyone wants to chat through?
I mean, there's a lot of racial bias happening right now in AI. And I don't know if I'm the best one to speak to that, but I know that there's information out there about, I mean, especially with Black women, like it's like, categorizing faces as there was one AI, and I know that this is a few years ago, but categorizing like Black women's faces as the faces of like primates, and how incredibly disgusting and offensive, and so yeah, it's hugely problematic, hugely.
Yeah, hugely problematic, I'd say. Um, I think there are other things other than fingers, I think. Did you say teeth? And kind of more like a purely visual. But then, yeah, I mean, the biases and I think prejudice, facial recognition in particular, and the mishaps that can happen from that. And then, yeah, like we talked about, I think we have a long way to go in correcting a lot of those, and therefore AI tends to learn from us. And so we need to kind of be the participants in order to address those things and limit and police the outcome.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's you're driving, as it were. And so, being kind of in full control of and understanding, what's going to happen with your tools, and what they might help you with, and what they're just, not going to be useful for this other stuff.
Mhm.
Because that's all quite horrific, really.
Mhm. What new skills would we need as marketers for augmentation of creativity with AI?
I just worry if you don't know what's going on. So there's going to be a use case for you where there will be something that helps you or helps your company or helps your business, some things that might just make things a little bit easier. And if you're not using them, other people probably are. And so it's just good for you to be up to speed. What do you guys think? And especially even Bree at your agency.
Yeah, I would say negotiation skills too, because it sounds like just browsing through the Q&A, a lot of folks are asking like, how do we, convince our bosses, or how do we convince the higher ups that we can use AI and that, it's not detrimental. And so I would say negotiation skills of understanding, what it can do for your organization, and then being able to leverage that information and kind of convince people otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to the point that we just talked about, I think you also have to be a police to make sure we're not furthering any unwanted biases, prejudices, et cetera. Like everyone has to be a participant in that. So understanding what you're looking at when you look, even if you're not the one creating the creative, like what you're getting and what you're going to put into market, and how to think about that from a user, customer, prospect perspective, and what that means to put into the world. I think that type of stuff definitely needs to come from everywhere. And we probably have time for one more. I know I started at the top.
There was one I saw, Chelsea, if I just go real fast.
Sure.
Do you think vendors providing AI capabilities will need to charge extra for those, or will it be a needed feature to stay competitive? I'm getting the feeling that it's going to be just the baseline. That software companies, including our own Smartsheet and Brandfolder, are both just using AI just all as a matter of course. And so the ability for you to charge more for that when everybody else is going to be sort of starting to integrate it too, I think is doubtful.
All right, lovely. Anyone have any other questions they see that they kind of want to respond to? I know there are quite a few, so sorry we can't get to everyone's. What are your favorites? Does anyone have a favorite that they want to share? Tool?
Well, my favorite right now is camcorder AI.
I've heard good things about it.
Shameless.
All right, wonderful. Final minute here. Thank you all so much for the Q&A too. We will try to, in the best way we can, maybe address some of these in future content. For now, we do have some resources that you can kind of dive into, and we're dropping a lot of the resources here. So reading more about AI, specifically around Smartsheet. We have kind of some tools that are available to you from Erica's company, Puke Rainbows, and Camcorder, some other webinars that might be helpful for you to look at and watch, just in case you want to keep diving further. And then beyond that, we hope you found this valuable. We're so happy that you joined us, and we really appreciate it. Again, you will be getting an email with the on-demand. And with that, have a great rest of your day.